Interesting, I found today, because you have in the traditional presentation of Lam-rim, the greatest stages of the path, you usually have renunciation, and then it has the three higher trainings in ethical discipline and concentration and discriminating awareness of voidness. Discriminate between how things do exist and how they don't exist. And the emphasis is on having the motivation, because to just have an understanding of voidness without any specific aim of what you're doing it for, then just like any positive action, it will build up basically positive karmic force, which will just improve your samsara. You can have a nice discussion over, around the coffee table about voidness, but it's not going to get you any further on the spiritual path, and you're not going to be able to understand it very deeply. And so the emphasis there is on having the proper motivation so that you can have the proper dedication. And so if you dedicate the karmic force, here it wouldn't necessarily be a karmic force. It's a big debate whether it's karmic or not. But in any case, you would dedicate whatever comes from that toward liberation. Or with bodhicitta, you dedicate it toward enlightenment. So it's like when you do something positive, then the default setting on the internal karma computer is that it goes into the improved samsara folder. But you have to actually very consciously press the button to save in either the for liberation folder or for enlightenment folder. That's why the dedication is so absolutely essential. And then that positive force will contribute toward liberation or enlightenment. And so they put in the Lam-rim, then the emphasis is on the motivation. So then that comes first. Give renunciation, and then the three higher trainings, and then they don't really explain it very deeply at all in the intermediate scope, where you're aiming for liberation, but then explain it more fully once you've gotten the bodhicitta motivation. And His Holiness put the emphasis the other way around, which is that you really need the understanding of voidness in order to have proper renunciation or bodhicitta. This is similar to what you find in the 7-point lojong. I call it cleansing of attitudes. It doesn't mean, that's how it usually translated as mind training. That sounds as though you're just intellectually training yourself to have a better memory, so I don't like that term. It literally means to cleanse away negative attitudes and transform them into positive attitudes. So in that text, it has first the presentation of deepest bodhicitta, before the presentation of relative bodhicitta, and it's only in the Gelug tradition that it's changed. And they say, according to some special oral lineage, which must come from someone, then it is thrown at the end of the text. Well, this, again, can appear in two places, but the earlier version of the text, the earlier edition of the text has it first. That's the original order of it. And it's the same idea. And what was interesting, you can look at it from several points of view. One point of view is, how do you know that liberation is possible or enlightenment is possible? And if you are not convinced that it's possible, then how can you sincerely aim to achieve that? And so either liberation or enlightenment. So this gets into the whole discussion of the natural purity of the mind, and that the disturbing emotions and attitudes, which are based on unawareness of voidness, usually called ignorance, but that is based on that. that supports the disturbing emotions and attitudes. And when you look at beginningless time, you have mental continuum. Mental continuum, from the point of view of logic, has no absolute beginning, because everything has to have a previous moment as its cause, and it can't just arise from nothing. If it arose from nothing, then there's from no cause, or it could arise from any cause, as Holiness was saying, which means the whole thing becomes absurd and chaotic. So that has beginningless continuity, and so do unawareness or ignorance and the disturbing emotions, and so do the positive qualities, love, compassion, and so on. So then you have to ask which one can be stronger, because they say that the positive qualities have no beginning and no end, just as the mental continuum has no beginning and no end, whereas the unawareness and the disturbing emotions and distorted attitudes and unawareness and everything have no beginning, but they do have an end. You can get rid of them. So, why? And the reason why is only as explained, is that you look at what supports them. And what supports the positive ones, the so-called the correct ones and the incorrect ones, are quite different. You can replace the negative ones with a correct understanding. Correct understanding and incorrect understanding are mutually exclusive. You can't simultaneously correctly understand and incorrectly understand. So then the question, as I said, is which is stronger? Which is going to really do it? And what will really do it is the correct understanding, because that's based on reason, which supports it. And the more you strengthen that, less suffering you have. And that's the whole point. What Buddha is talking about is how to get rid of suffering. And so if that's what your aim is, as opposed, theoretically you could say your aim was to have more suffering, then you would say that unawareness was better because it brings you more suffering. But if your aim, as part of the basic nature of sentient beings, is that they want to be happy and they don't want to be unhappy, then the correct understanding is stronger. It's based on logic and it gets rid of suffering. Whereas the more you examine the incorrect understanding based on logic, this of course is on the premise that logic is correct, which not everybody agrees that there is such a thing as logic and it is correct. But if you accept that premise, the more that you work on the side of unawareness and confusion, more suffering you get, and it's not supported by logic. So because of that, if you could get to the point, an Arya is able to have non-conceptual cognition of voidness, so able to have absolutely no grasping of true existence, and not even, their mind doesn't even make an appearance of true existence. So at that point, there is a total absence of any appearance or believing in that appearance of true existence. So that starts the process. That's why they're the Arya Sangha, the Sangha refuge. They've gotten it for a little while. And that's going to get rid of part and part, a little bit of the distorted side, the doctrinally based disturbing emotions, the ones that are based on hearing an incorrect tenet system and believing it. Basically one of the Hindu or Jain systems. If you could get that state of mind, the total absorption on voidness, with no, not even appearance making of true existence, let alone believing in it, if you can get that all the time, which is what a Buddha does, only a Buddha does, then you've gotten rid of all the unawareness, you've gotten rid of all the distorted side. So that's why all of these can be eliminated. So, if you understand that, then if you understand that in order to get there, you have to build up a tremendous amount of positive force and dedicate it toward that goal, then you have an understanding of, as His Holiness says, two truths, you understand the four truths, Four Noble Nagarjuna says this, and that leads you to an understanding and conviction in the three jewels, that there is such a thing as the Dharma jewel, which is that state in which is the total stopping forever of this distorted side, and the full realization of true path, which is not only the opponent to that, but the result of it as well. The understanding of voidness and then having that all the time. So both the path and the result. If you gain understanding of that, well, that's the Dharma jewel, and then the Sangha jewel are those that have a little bit of that, sometimes. And the Buddhists are the ones that have it all the time. So, if you understand that, then you can be convinced that there is such a thing as liberation, because the Aryas on the path, the Arya Sangha on the path, achieve liberation, part of the way to Buddhahood. And you can be convinced that it's possible to achieve enlightenment. And so, on that basis, then you can actually have proper renunciation and bodhicitta with confidence that attainment of liberation and enlightenment is possible. And then the whole discussion gets into, so let's go into it. But that it's possible for me to achieve that. Not just that Buddha or these guys in ancient India achieved it. And for that you have to get into the whole Buddha nature discussion. So this is the, what should we say, what's very important for taking an empowerment like Kalachakra or any other empowerment is to be very confident in the Tantra path. As Holiness mentioned that briefly. And you can only really get confidence in the Tantra path based on, first of all, confidence in the Sutra path, and confidence that liberation and enlightenment are possible. So this is what was being emphasized here in the Nagarjuna text as a preparation. And then it's necessary to understand, as Holiness was alluding to this, that really to be able to achieve enlightenment, you need to have that understanding of voidness non-conceptually, not only with renunciation behind it, not only with bodhicitta behind it, not only with an enormous amount of, these usually called the two collections, the two networks, I call them, of positive force and deep awareness, merit and wisdom. This tremendous positive force, this tremendous, further and further experience of the deep awareness of voidness, so it builds up a habit of it. And the type of deep awareness of conventional truth that sort of goes along with that. But in addition to all of that, what you need is the mind that has that, all of this, is the clear light mind, the subtlest type of mind. And the reason why you need that is that, first of all, that's the type of mind that Buddha has. I mean, everybody has it on a basis level. But everybody has these other grosser levels, which are on top of it. And this is what His Holiness was correcting Thupten Jimba about, that what is important about the clear light mind is not that it's more, you're missing the full essence of it if you say that it is more subtle than the conceptual mind. It is more subtle than the conceptual mind, but it's more subtle than all of those rough minds. conceptual mind is just one level of mind. So it is more fundamental than that, underlying that. And it does not have, not only does it not have grasping for true existence, which is conceptual. It's only conceptual mind that grasps for true. You know the expression grasping for true existence has two meanings. It means to just perceive true existence. So you have that in sense cognition as well, or to take it as true, to believe that what appears corresponds to reality. That's only conceptually. So not only is it free of the conceptual mind that believes in this junk that our mind makes appear, but it is also more subtle than the level of mind that makes that appearance of true existence, which would be not just the conceptual level of mind, but the sense cognition, non-conceptual, rough level of mind. And when we see that's non-conceptual, or when we dream, that's non-conceptual, it's not imagination, it's not the same, it's more vivid in a dream. So it's more subtle than that. It doesn't make the appearance of true existence. This is what the term, I forget how was Thupten Jinpa translating, I think elaborations. He was using mental fabrication. That refers to making an appearance of true existence.
Conceptual elaboration. But I think he was using Bhaktala's translation that he had in print.
Whatever he was using, so that you know to refer back to what Thupten Jinpa was saying. That's the production of this junk, these deceptive appearances. And so it doesn't do that either. And because it doesn't do that either, because only grosser levels of mind do it, and because the grosser levels of mind don't have unbroken continuity, His Holiness was saying, because they cease in the short period of death existence, when you only have the clear light level. So because they don't have, that clear light level doesn't have unbroken continuity, then you could say that, well, that has to be the actual conventional nature of the mind. And therefore that's unstained, because it is similar to the total absorption on voidness. The only difference is that it doesn't understand what's happening. In Norsan Gyatso's commentary, the one that was just published, which was translated, he explains that with the clear light cognition, you get an appearance like a total absorption on voidness. In other words, no appearance of true existence. But you don't understand it. So this is why you need the understanding of voidness, beforehand, in order to apply it at that moment. But it is what's called a similar class cause. In a similar class, the same type of animal as total absorption on voidness. So, on the basis of that, having unbroken continuity, and that's the only level of mind that has unbroken continuity, you can say the nature of the mind is not stained by these other levels. So this is a great advantage, and this is what Anuttara Yoga Tantra is all about, is to get to that level and to be able to sustain that level. And if you can sustain that level and add to it the non-conceptual understanding of voidness, which you're only going to be able to get if you've built up enough, if you have bodhicitta and renunciation and bodhicitta and these two networks or two collections, then you've got it. And you've got Buddha. So to really take the empowerment fully with conviction, you need the conviction that liberation is possible, enlightenment is possible, nature of the mind is not stained by these fleeting things, which is not just referring to the conceptual mind, it's not just referring to the disturbing emotions, but it's referring to all the grosser levels that make these appearances of true existence, which are the basis for then believing in it, and confident in the Tantra method for actually being able to get to that clear light level, not having to wait till you die to experience it. Then, on that basis, I really want to do Tantra. This is what His Holiness was leading up to. He was leading up to. Oh, I mean, it was great. His Holiness was explaining today. He was explaining that, again, I don't, His Holiness was talking about the difference between Svatantrika and Prasangika in Madhyamaka. And I don't know if this is of interest. I was very excited about it, so I'm just babbling on about it. But I was very excited because His Holiness explained it so nicely, so well. He was saying that one of the big objections to Svatantrika is that they say that see, the whole issue in terms of voidness. What's voidness all about? What's it talking about? It's talking about how do you establish or prove that something exists. How do you know it exists? How do you prove it exists? What establishes its existence? Usually in the discussions, and there is this terminology that voidness is talking about how things exist. Is it inherent existence? Is it this type of existence? Is that type of existence? And that's one way of discussing it. But you can also look at it a little bit more technically, which is revealed by the terminology, both in Sanskrit and Tibetan. And the word that's used with all these, that's translated as existence when you have these expressions like true existence, inherent existence, and so on, is the same word. It's a variation of the word grammatically, with the word which means an affirmation or a proof of something. You prove something. So it's how you establish. How do you know that something exists? And so the lower tenet systems are saying, well, it produces an effect, or these sort of things that that it exists. Establishes that it exists. Now, in the Madhyamaka schools, Svatantrika and Prasangika, they say that, well, what establishes that it exists? Well, it can be mentally labeled. It is, what should we say? What a mental label refers to, what a concept. What establishes that it exists? Well, we have a concept, we have a word for it, and it's the referent object of the word or concept. So the fact that we have a word or concept for it establishes that you know that it exists. We have the word or concept of table, or of the example I love to use for this is jealousy. What establishes that there's such a thing as jealousy? Well, think about it. Think of our mental experience of things. Well, experience is just mental anyway, but think of experiencing of things in the experience of living beings. Now, that's a huge spectrum of experience. How do you divide that into things? So, the cave people got together and they took acoustic patterns like that, and they said, we're going to make this. Somebody got the idea that this is going to be a word, and this is going to have meaning. And so arbitrarily, they make up a definition, and they take the whole spectrum of, they're probably talking about human experience, maybe a little bit animal experience as well, and they arbitrarily make a line on this side and on that side, and they say this parcel of experience, that's going to be the meaning that we're going to assign to, this acoustic pattern, totally meaningless, arbitrary acoustic pattern. And that's a word. And the definition is also made up by the mind because they made up the definition of it. And every group of cave people had different conventions. So they divided human experience and animal experience differently, with different boundaries. And language evolved that way, and conceptual thinking evolved that way. Animals have concepts too, otherwise the cow could never find its barn or identify its baby. But they don't do it with acoustic patterns. Do it with smells or visual things. But anyway, it's the same thing, the same idea. It's arbitrary. Convention is what we call it. So now we have this convention arbitrarily set up by a group of cave people, and they take the absolutely meaningless acoustic pattern, jealousy, jealousy, make it into a word, assign it a meaning, right into the dictionary, there's the meaning of it, the defining characteristic of what it is, and then there is this thing, jealousy. And so we all feel jealous. And we think that jealousy is a thing. And that it's established from its own side. Nothing establishes it from its own side. There are no boundaries in human experience or animal experience that parses it into things. Although conventionally, you experience jealousy. Also, you could experience envy. What's the difference? Let's have this turned over. Everything's like that. Any object. Table. What's a table? How could you, there's so many different items that could be called to table. And some people would call this a table because it has 4 legs and you could put something on it and it'll hold it. And you could eat off of this. What is this table? What's a table? So out of all the items and things, you sort of make up a defining characteristic, and now you have a category of table. Okay, so it's convention only. Now, the Dhammaka says that, what establishes that things exist? That there is such a thing as jealousy. Well, it's the referent word. It's the referent object of the word or concept, jealousy. That's jealousy. Now, it's on a basis. What's the basis? When we talk about mental labeling, you have 3 things. You have the basis for labeling. You have the label, which is just an acoustic pattern or a concept with a conventionally assigned definition to it, defining characteristic to it. And then you have the designated object, what is designated by the word or concept, jealousy. But that is really like an illusion, because it's not the basis, it's not the word, it's what it refers to. Okay, so now, basis. Can you find the referent object in the basis? Where can you find it? Can you point to it? So this is what His Holiness was mentioning today, which I found really very nice. Because he was very clear about it. He's explained it. I've heard him explain it before, but I didn't really understand it. as well. Not that I fully understand it at all, but it is always explained it very nicely, which is Svatantrika says that it appears. And this is the problem with Svatantrika. They say that what establishes that it exists? You talk about inherent existence. That's jargon. What it means, you have to look at the definition. Otherwise, you're confused by the English connotations of the word inherent, which are a bit irrelevant. The definition of it is that the referent object of a word or concept can be found. And its findability establishes that it exists. That's the definition of inherent existence. That's what they're talking about. What Prasangika is refuting. Okay, so can you find the referent object of the word? Well, where can you find it? You find it in the basis. Now, when you say, so what Svatantrika says is that the basis appears. Not only the basis appears, the thing appears. The designated object appears, and then you have to refute something about it, which is that it exists independent of being the referent object of a word or concept. And this is what Svatantrika is all about. It's a combination of the two. But what the Prasangika really objects to is this thing that you put as part of what establishes that it exists, the fact that it appears. Yeah, the referent object appears, and then you refute it. And as Holiness was explaining, you can't say, hey, come on, this is the object of refutation, is what appears, according to Prasangika. So you can't say the object of refutation, which is actually doesn't exist at all, that appears as if the invaders from the fifth dimension appear, and then you refute that they come from the fifth dimension. Not like that. So that's what's wrong with it. With the Svatantrika view, that you can't say that just because something appears, and in addition, it's the referent object of words or concepts, that establishes that exists. Because everything that appears to the mind is an appearance of true existence. So everything that appears to the mind is false. So, Prasangika says the only thing that establishes that anything exists is that it's the referent object of a word or concept for it. Now, there's such a thing as jealousy. Well, we have a word or concept for it, and it can be validated by other valid cognitions. It's only simplified. There are three things that it has to satisfy according to Chandrakirti. The first one is that it has to fit a pattern, a convention. So you didn't just make up the word. Everybody has agreed, and there it is in the dictionary, jealousy. So we've agreed on a convention of what to call it. Then it has to be not contradicted by a mind that validly cognizes the conventional appearance of things, the relative truth or superficial thing, what appears. So the simplest example is just because I see a blur, when I take my glasses off, that doesn't prove that a blur actually is existing there. All that it is, I'm seeing a blur, but the fault is a deceptive, a faulty sensor in my eyes. So that's what his Holiness was saying. Well, if you look later and you check, and other people that are wearing their glasses or can hear properly experience it, or that they're not crazy with paranoia or whatever, then it's okay. And then the third criterion is that it's not contradicted by a mind that validly knows the deepest truth of things. It's often translated as ultimate truth, but His Holiness was indicating that you want to be careful of that, because then you get this transcendental realm. It's the ultimate, the real thing. So you have, if it's not contradicted, because an appearance of true existence, well, everybody sees an appearance of true existence, but that's contradicted by an Arya's total absorption. That, hey, there is no, that's not the case, that's not valid. So only from the side of the mind can you establish that something actually exists. You can't establish it from the side of the object. So this is very important. It's quite interesting. His Holiness in another teaching was where he was talking about the tenet systems, was saying this is why Chittamatra, the mind only, is such an important school. Because it's a stepping stone. If you can understand, this is exactly what Shantideva says at the beginning of the 9th chapter of Bodhicharyavatara, that he says that if you can understand something with a relatively simple level, then you can accept it. Then you can accept it on a deeper, you can have a deeper understanding that is similar to it. So he said that it is, the example that he gives is like an illusion. If you can understand that things are like an illusion on a simple level, you can understand it on a more profound level. Here, he, what His Holiness referred to earlier, was that if you can understand that from Chittamatra, that appearances are not established from the side of the object, appearances are established from the side of the mind, then you can go to understanding that the way, how do you establish that something exists, is not from the side of the object, that it's from the side of the mind.
So it means that we are all self-projection.
Pardon?
That could mean that we are all self-projection of others.
We are all self-projections of others. We are all projections of others. No. You can't say that everybody exists in your mind or everybody exists in my mind. You can just say that what I perceive is a mental hologram produced by my mental continuum. That's what I perceive. It's very difficult to prove. For example, I challenge my classes, I teach, and I challenge my classes to prove that we're all in the same room. Can anybody here prove that we're in the same room? And I said that if everybody in this room took a picture of what they see, and then they give it to an impartial person, and you lay out all these pictures, and this person would say, well, you're all in a different place. Look, here are different pictures.
Yeah, but you could just define the room, define the people, and then say, there, I've defined it.
Well, how are you defining it? Is it from the side of the object or from the side of the mind?
It doesn't matter how you define it. Once it's established as a convention, it's an established convention.
Just because there's an established convention of a group of crazy people deciding that they're all in the same place, that doesn't prove it.
Well, then nothing is proven.
Well, that is the big question. How do you prove anything?
No,
that's the big question. And this is one of the arguments as well between Svatantrika and Prasangrika. Because Svatantrika is saying that there is logic on the side of the universe. Very, very important thing to think about. Are the laws of nature, we can use this word that I was saying is better to avoid, inherent in the universe? Or are they only conventions made up by the mind to try to understand how the universe works? And so Prasangrika says, no, this is what they argue about with the Svatantrika, because the Svatantrika is saying, in their logical arguments, that there is such a thing as logic, and that you can use logic to prove that something exists. And and the only thing that you have to refute is that you're using wrong logic if you come to a wrong conclusion. So, Prasangika says, no, 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 you can't do that. The only way that you can get somebody to the mind to stop making an incorrect belief is not to prove that, well, your incorrect belief was based on incorrect logic, but to show the absurd conclusion that follows from that belief. And then you realize that it was ridiculous, and then you stop.
Is that the same as asserting that you can't prove anything?
That would be non-Galupa way of saying it, yes. That would be a non-Galupa way of saying it. So you can only establish that things exist because they are the referent objects of the words and labels for them, and names for them, concepts for them. There's nothing on the side of the object that establishes that it exists, that proves that it exists. Just because it appears doesn't. Now this is very crucial when you get to the Tantra. Because if you look at, I don't know if His Holiness is going to go into this, but sometimes he does. There's no way of predicting what His Holiness is going to explain about Kalachakra. But you have it's expressed most nicely in the Sakya view of inseparable samsara and nirvana, which is that the clear light mind is the source of all appearances, pure and impure. So, and His Holiness likes to speak in terms of that. So everything is coming from the appearances of the clear light mind. Clear light mind makes these appearances. So either it is pure, which means without appearing to be truly existent, or it is impure, which means with an appearance of true existence. And by having the appearance of a Buddha figure, it helps you to not think in your ordinary way. So pure and impure is not just our usual body that gets sick, and then the pure appearance of a Buddha figure or a deity. That's just taking it on on the conventional level. What you want to do is do that on the deepest level. That this helps you to understand what really it's talking about, which is the difference between an appearance of true existence and not an appearance of true existence. So, if you do a Svatantrika Tantra, then you would say, well, the clear light mind made this appearance, so that establishes that it exists, and is what the word for it refers to. So that's why it's so important to have the Prasangika understanding with Tantra, because there's that danger that you'll go to a Svatantrika view when you learn about all appearances are from the clear light mind. It's a very important point.
Alex,
Yeah.
when you say that, according to Svatrantika, they say that the appearance is there and therefore it exists because it's just there, and it's the reference to a name or what do you call it, an acoustic pattern. Mm-hmm. Is that the same as when they say that according to Svatrantika, conventional reality exists inherently for them?
Exactly.
Because you said that all appearances, until we reach that state of directly realizing emptiness, are appearing as truly existent.
Right.
So that's equivalent. That's
Yeah.
the same.
Right. That's what inherent existence means. That's why it's very important not to just stay at the level of jargon. And all translators give different jargon for the same words, but to always really push your local geishas to give you the definition. If you don't know the definition, you don't know what they're talking about. And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your point of view, each of the tenet systems has a different definition for all these terms, different types of existence. And not only do they have different definitions of it in the tenet systems, but each of the Tibetan traditions have different definitions for each of the tenet systems. So, and then it gets even worse, because within one tradition, like Gelugpa, Well, the Jetsumba textbooks have one set of definitions, the Kenshin textbooks have another set of definitions. And so if you don't know what monastery your geisha comes from and what textbooks he's using, you get confused. And you ask two Galupa geishas, and they're coming from different textbook traditions, and they give you two contradictory answers. This, nobody tells you that. You need to know that. Otherwise, it's very, very confusing.
Right.
Very confusing. So always, go to the definition. Very important.
Alex, something seems a little confusing.
I'm sorry if I'm dumping the Pacific Ocean. All of this stuff. I'm very excited about it. It's very nice. So let's explain.
You've presented it very well. Thank you. This notion of the appearance being inherent, truly existent from the Svatrantika, being also a referent object.
Well, everybody below Prasangika says that they believe in this existence established by its findability. The findability of the referent object of words and concepts.
Where I'm having a little trouble distinguishing based on this kind of approach, or if not this approach, at this point, where we're at this context, is the same problem happens in terms of reifying the clear-like mind from Chittamatra.
Yeah.
So in this sense, there's not a big difference, or there must be a difference, but that's where I'm not
There's
seeing
a difference. The difference between Chittamatra and Svatantrika on this point is that Chittamatra says that the mind has true existence. By true existence, what they mean is that it is... Well, no. That's another level of it. There's several levels of it. But what they mean by true existence is its findability, that it can be established independently of being the referent object of the word for it. And Svatantrika says, no. What establishes that it is the referent object of the word for it, but in addition, from its own side, it's appearing. Not from its own side, it's appearing, but then you get into the difference between Yogacara and Sautrantika, Svatantrika, but that it is something from its own side is also making it exist. This referent object is findable. So the earlier schools, when they talk about true existence, they're talking about its existence can be established independently of being the referent object for a word or concept. Because you don't have to know it. It's not like a category. That's what often is translated as these term universals, meaning universals, categories, what they're talking about. A category of a table, a category of jealousy that would be applicable to many people's experience or many objects. It's a category. What's a category? Well, that's obviously something that's made up with words or concepts. You can only establish that there is such a category in terms of a word or a concept.
What's the Tibetan word for this?
Well, these are these dajis and tunjis.
That's different, I think. This is not what they usually say, meaning generality?
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah. They're talking about categories, to put it in plain English.
Nice.
If there are all these differences and all these different ways of looking at it, is there one that works and the others don't, or do they all work?
This is a very good question. If there are all of these, is there one that works and one that doesn't? Underlying that is there one that's really true? And this I tend to think, that way of thinking, that type of question, what underlies it is this culturally specific grasping for one God, one truth. What does it really mean? And that's our way of thinking. Whereas that's not the way of thinking in Buddhism. Pardon?
The definition is to give it one particular
rightness.
any object. This is what
Right,
it means.
exactly. That's our Western culturally specific biblical way of thinking. So that's not how everybody thinks. What is, you have these different, Buddha taught all of these as skillful means. They're all correct. Now, the Tibetans come along and they say that, hey, they're really into, this is one of the big contributions that the Tibetans made to the historical development of Buddhism, which is, Buddha taught all these sutras that are completely chaotic. It's really difficult to figure out what's going on in all these sutras. How did the sutras come about? Buddha and his bunch of monks, excuse me for the expression, Buddha and his bunch of monks were invited for lunch by different people, and after lunch, Buddha, could you please give a talk? And Buddha gave a talk, and Buddha was very skillful, so he gave different talk to different people, to the king, to a peasant, to an educated person, to an uneducated person. He made it understandable. So then you get all the sutras. Somebody had a tremendous memory. They didn't write it down, because writing was only used in those days for either military purposes, you want to send a message to your army, or the merchants for keeping records. You use writing for philosophical things. That came centuries and centuries later, and somebody had the brilliant idea to do that. But earlier, nobody used writing for philosophical things, but people had miraculously these tremendous memories. And so they remembered. I mean, this is why Shantideva is so great, because he says, well, any reason that you say that Mahayana is not the teachings of the Buddha, you can say Hinayana is not the teachings of the Buddha. Nothing was written down. So you're just saying that people remembered it perfectly over so many centuries, and that proves that this is an authentic teaching? Come on, this doesn't, if you're going to say that proves Hinayana, then we can say that proves Mahayana as well, as being valid. So it's really good argument. Now, the sutras then are very disorganized. So the Indians come along and they write the commentaries, and you get Nagarjuna, you get these people, and they put it into some sort of organized fashion. Great, wonderful. The Tibetans come along and they add outlines to it. Tibetans are very orderly. Makes a lot of sense in terms of their culture. If you're a nomadic culture and you've got to pack up your tent and pack it on the yaks, you know what bag everything is in, and while you're on the road, you have to know where the cheese is, where the tea is, what bag it's in. And then when you unpack, set up your tent, limited space. Tibetans are great. I mean, they are the most fantastic packers and the most fantastic, live in a tiny space and know where everything is and have a little space, for everything. They're great at that. Best people I've ever come across for doing that. So they did that with the Indian commentaries. They made all these tremendous outlines and stuff, and then you get graded paths. Tisha's idea, but the Tibetans really picked up on it. And then they study the tenet systems according to a logical order. And so you can say that one leads to the deepest understanding, that's Prasangika. But everybody has a different understanding of what's Prasangika. Tsongkhapa was an unbelievable revolutionary radical. He disagreed with everybody that came before him. And what is presented as Prasangika, you really have to keep in mind, this is Galupa Prasangika. This is not what the Nyingmas, Sakyas, and Karyus say Prasangika is saying. They say something quite different. Don't think that it's universal. He was incredibly, revolutionary. So anyway, you get Prasangika. The others would say Prasangika is also supreme, but then they have Mahamadhyamaka, and again it's Tantra, and these sort of things. But anyway, Prasangika, the other ones are leading to this, but the other ones are quite valid. because they will help to diminish suffering. They won't get rid of everything, but they'll help to diminish suffering. And so that's okay, that's cool. And this was also one of the quite radical things that Tsongkhapa came up with. Manjushri told him all of this. Is the way that it's usually explained, that he didn't just, from his own brilliance, do this. Sort of like a humility statement, which is fine, because it's very difficult to know what in the world does that mean that Manjushri told him all of this. In any case. And His Holiness was mentioning it today. Do you recall His Holiness was talking about the difference between gross and subtle disturbing emotions? Okay, so what's that all about? But that's all. Again, you have to go to the definitions, otherwise, it's really impossible to have any idea what they're talking about, what Tsongkhapa is talking about this, because this is specifically for Sangha. Now, in terms of what I call grasping for an impossible soul of a person, it's usually translated as selflessness of a person. Self is too psychological a term. They're talking about soul. And this is the soul that is impossible. There is no such thing. That's not what a person is. And so what automatically arises, that was also brilliant, what His Holiness presented, which was that, goes back hundreds of years before Buddha. What automatically arises is, and this I don't think came through so clearly, but there's this term in Tibetan, which is, what it means is a self-sufficiently knowable self. That's what automatically arises. A self that is self-sufficiently knowable, that can be known without anything else appearing simultaneously. This is what automatically arises. So if, and we say that all the time. I see Michael. I see Barry. I don't know your ordained name. But we say, I'm seeing a person. We don't say, I'm seeing a body, and on the basis of that body, I can designate Michael. We think that I'm seeing Michael, independent of anything else appearing. Or, I'm sitting on the couch. A body is sitting on the couch, and labeled on the body, there's a me. Are there two things sitting on the couch? Is the body sitting on the couch, and I'm sitting on the couch, so there are two things sitting on the couch? Well, no. Then you get the whole Prasangika trip with it. But that's what is self-sufficiently knowable, and that automatically arises. We all think that, I know Mary. What do you mean, I know Mary? What do you know? I know the body of Mary. I know the mind of Mary. What do you know? I know the name Mary. On the basis of that, I can say I know Mary. But we don't think that. Automatically it arises, I know Mary. Everybody has that. That's what is automatically arising. Now, people are thinking about this, and then you get these pre-Buddhist Indian philosophical systems. And so they say that, this me, they make it into an Atman, a soul. And this me is static. It means it never changes, I'm always the same. And it's a monolith, which means it has no parts. So they take it to two extremes. Either you say there's one with the universe, one partless, Atman is Brahman trip. Or, that's what you have in the Upanishads, or it's a tiny, monad, like a spark of light, that's in everybody. It has, no parts. So it doesn't change. None of these things change. And it's separate from the aggregates, separate from a body and mind. And so because it goes into a body and comes out of a body and goes into another body, and is either the inhabitant of the aggregates, or the possessor of the aggregates, or the controller of the aggregates. So that's the gross impossible me. That doesn't exist. That's just a fabrication. But underlying that is the one that's self-sufficiently knowable, that everybody has. Now, difference between subtle and gross. Disturbing emotions. Great. What Tsongkhapa says, comes up with this, is that if you are unaware of this lack of an impossible soul of a person, this subtle one, this is what all the disturbing emotions are based on. In other words, this is it's me, and I know myself, and I'm sitting here on the table, and so on the couch, and then from this you get, this is my seat, and don't you sit on it, and there's attachment to it, and anger if anybody else sits here, and so on. So there's a whole emotional trip that is based on this grasping for me to exist as a self-sufficiently knowable entity. So, Tsongkhapa says, those are the gross disturbing emotions. They automatically arise in gross disturbing emotions. We're not talking about the doctrinally based ones based on believing one of these Hindu, I'm one with the universe trips. Now, he says that with the understanding of voidness from the lower tenet system, the non-prasangika tenet systems, you can get rid of that. There's no appearance of that, in total absorption on voidness based on their understanding. You get rid of it forever. However, what you haven't gotten rid of is what is underlying that, which is the appearance-making of true existence and grasping for true existence. And so you can have automatically arising, let's not get into doctrinally and automatically arising prasangika says, because you could still believe in these lower systems. So it would be, according to prasangika, still doctrinally based. You have a type of disturbing emotion that somebody who has had this non-conceptual cognition of voidness based on a lower tenet system that they're left with, that is no longer, the way that Thupten Jimbo was explaining it, is that rather than being emotionally based, it's cognitively based. And so it is not, and this I found was really nice, because His Holiness was speaking it from an experiential point of view, that it was very difficult to know what's the difference between these gross and subtle. So the gross, he said, is based on this grasping for, me, self-sufficiently knowable me. Get rid of that. You're left with the subtle, which is just based on the fact that the mind makes the projection of true existence and you believe in it. But it is not based on believing in a self-sufficiently knowable me. That's the subtle type of disturbing emotion. And so that only prasangika understanding can get rid of.
Can you say
What is the basis for what is underlying it? What's supporting the disturbing emotion? Either the appearance making, the mind makes this hologram, the appearance making of true existence and the appearance making of a me that can be known by itself. Or just the appearance-making of true existence. Without the appearance-making, because you've gotten a stopping of it, it's not going to ever come again, of a self-sufficiently knowable me. So the subtle one is just based on the appearance-making of true existence, and that would be more of a cognitively based disturbing emotion, not a attitude, not an emotionally based one.
So is that after the path of seeing? Is that what happens?
No, because you can only achieve the path of seeing with the prasangika understanding of voidness. So you haven't gotten anywhere from the Prasangika point. You have gotten somewhere.
You got to the intellectual understanding. No.
Yeah. You've gotten somewhere, but you haven't gotten, really far enough. So this was the point that I wanted to make, is that you have the Tibetans make this gradual path in which you go through the tenet systems, and in steps it gets rid of junk that you want to get rid of. So you get to the Prasangika one. So this was very, very nice. It was very, very difficult to know what in the world is Tsongkhapa talking about. It's talking about these subtle disturbing emotions.
Alex,
That's indicated very nicely.
I find this very beautiful and very helpful. I could almost go on all night with you. All of us have commitments, tomorrow morning.
Right, I haven't taken my watch out, so I have no idea what time it is.
It's
8:30.
8:30 on this one. I'm wondering if we might have a few questions.
Yeah,
That's, I
absolutely.
was just going to say, we have a half an hour in the room, and I know there's people who have
So let's do
questions
questions.
about six-session Kalachakra Guru Yoga
Absolutely.
and so on.
Questions?
Could you talk us through it?
Go on. Pardon?
Could you talk us through it for novices?
Talk you through it. The six-session Tibetan, the six-session Kalachakra, try that again, Kalachakra six-session yoga fulfills, it's basically a six-session yoga. It's not the sadhana. It has a lot of things from the sadhana put into it, but it is not the full sadhana in terms of having all the full defining characteristics of the sadhana. It has most of them, so it's pretty okay. In terms of a very good practice that is more extensive than just the generic six-session practice. And it follows from the six-session practice, because the six-session practice is basically a way of keeping the 19 closely bonding practices of the 5 Buddha families. What are Buddha families? Buddha families, that word is referring to different aspects of Buddha nature. That's the word. That's what the word means. The family traits. So within Buddha nature factors, we have 5 basic ones that are discussed in Anuttara Yoga, although in Kalachakra there's 6, but 5 in general for these 19. And the 5 can be explained in terms of body, speech, mind, good qualities, and enlightening influence or Buddha activity. It's sometimes translated, like you get in Uttara Tantra, the furthest everlasting stream, Maitreya's text, sutra text. Or you can speak just in terms of each of them having 5. The one that's most usual is in terms of the mind. So you have the 5 types of deep awareness, the so-called Buddha wisdoms, mirror-like and equalizing and individualizing, accomplishing, and the sphere of reality. Those 5. So, these 5 families. So, what do you want? These 5 types of family traits taken on many different levels. So, there are different types of practices that you can do that will make a Tibetan word is tamsik or samaya. I translate it as a close bond. People sometimes translate it as a commitment, but that, I think, loses the meaning. It's making a close bond with the thing so that you could actualize it more easily. So, for instance, the equalizing awareness. See, everybody is equal. Well, when that gets overlaid with grasping for true existence, you don't see everybody's equal. You want to keep it for me, not share with you. You don't see that everybody wants it as well. So you get miserliness. And so as you get rid of that miserliness or arrogance, I'm better than everybody else, you don't see the equality. Then you practice the 4 types of generosity. By practicing the 4 types of generosity, and this is represented by Ratnasambhava, 4 types of generosity, that helps you to purify away this miserliness so that you can eventually see the equality of everybody. this type of thing. So you have these 19, and that's basically what the six-session practice is all about, is to maintain that close bond by being mindful of these 19 6 times a day. Usually 3 times in the morning, 3 times at night, but it doesn't matter when you do it, actually. Tibetans do it usually 3 in the morning, 3 at night. Okay. Now, in addition to that, and also it has, various things from the 50 stanzas on the Guru that also are pretty good to keep in terms of Tantra, like offering a mandala, these type of things. So it fulfills them as well, and it fulfills some of the Tantric Bodhisattva vows, like to meditate on voidness every day, and this type of stuff. Okay. And you review the vows, which are very important, otherwise you forget them. So it's pretty good to remain mindful of them, to actually recite what all the vows are. Now, what it throws into it, on top of it, is the certain aspects from the sadhana. Sadhana is a way to actualize. It's the word that means a method to actualize yourself as a Buddha figure. That's what a sadhana means. So, you practice doing that. And practicing doing that, well, I don't know that I want to. We don't have so much time. And actually, I'm giving a talk on Sunday morning. People have asked me to give a talk to a larger group at 10 in the morning, which is the entrance to the big hall where we're going, which is from where the streetcar stop is, the far end of that big long hall. When you walk in, there's a big empty space to the left. So it'll be there. If anybody has a loudspeaker, that would be an amplifier, that would be great, because although I have a pretty loud voice, I don't know that it can be so effective where there's such a high ceiling. But in any case, there I'll go into it a little bit further. But anyway, let me finish what I'm saying. So, unless it's a specific question about where and when and that sort of thing, Sunday morning at 10.
No, I have 2
very specific questions. Okay, so you want to aim for that with Tantra. You practice now that you're able to, that you're at that goal already, and that has to be based on understanding the validity of mentally labeling that you are a Buddha now, based on Buddha nature, with the conviction that, because this is what bodhicitta is all about, what you're aimed at is not Buddhahood in general, it's not the Buddhahood of Shakyamuni. Those aren't things that you can attain. You're aiming at the not yet, at the enlightenment that has not yet happened, but which can happen further down the line of your own mental continuum. That's what you're aiming at. It's not yet happened, though. It's not that it's happening somewhere else. But it can happen based on the fact that we have Buddha nature if you put in all the conditions, the 2 networks, the positive force, the deep awareness, bodhicitta, and all this sort of stuff. So you're aiming for, when you're aiming for that, then you imagine that you're that way now. So the Kalachakra succession adds into the basic succession, then lots of different things about how to, a lot of preliminaries. So much more stuff for building a positive force. You go through, you do the 10 far-reaching attitudes, the 10 perfections, the 4 ways of helping others, and all this sort of stuff. So you remind yourself of all this stuff to build up positive force. And there's also getting inspiration. It's usually a blessing. Getting inspiration from the teacher, His Holiness, with the taking the empowerment from Kalachakra. Well, what's that all about? That's all about basically activating Buddha nature. That's what empowerment is all about. Because you have these Buddha nature factors, and you want to activate them. So the empowerment activates them. And that's also what you want inspiration for, because that activates, gives a little bit more force to it than actualizing what you're aiming for. So you add that into it, and you add the much more detail about the building up the network of deep awareness, so focusing on voidness. In the six-session practice, the generic one is basically Guhya Samaja. So you have in Guhya Samaja the form of the central figure in different parts of the sadhana is called either Vajradhara or Vajrasattva, and so that's what they're called in this thing, and they're visualized in the simple form as in Guhya Samaja. Well, in some commentaries, did some tape recorder just end?
Yes.
Yeah.
In practice, it says, well, you can add anything. It can be done in the context of any practice. It doesn't have to be done generically Guhya Samaja. So you can do Yamantika, you can do a Chakra Samvara, you can do anybody, according to what is the deity practice that you're doing it as part of. And so here we do it in terms of Kalachakra. So then the question is, how do you do the voidness meditation when you arise? You have to be mindful of voidness. And there are two commentarial traditions to it. One just says, well, instantaneous arisal. Yeah, think of voidness and then instantaneous arisal. The commentary that actually comes from Pabonka is that, well, hey, you can do it like in a sadhana and go through the dissolution of, the withdrawal of the consciousness from the gross elements and from the different levels of appearance-making of true existence. That's these. It's usually translated as the white, red, and black appearances, and which has to do with the level of subtlety of appearance of true existence that your mind is projecting, and get down to the clear light level. So you can do the voidness meditation in terms of that. So here in the six-session practice, you do as in the sadhana, you do that type of going down to voidness, generation as the deity, and rather than just as the simple figure, you have the first row of figures around these Shaktis, these powerful ladies, which have many, many levels of what they represent. And you do the mantra and that sort of stuff, and then you go back to the six-session. Regular, generic succession. And you add at the end of it, although it's totally optional, the long prayer at the end of the Kalachakra sadhana, which reviews all the steps of the generation and complete stage of the Kalachakra practice. So that's all it is. That's all it is. Pardon?
It's a beautiful prayer.
Oh, of course, it's a very beautiful prayer. Very, very beautiful prayer.
Alex, this was written contemporarily. It was written by His Holiness, current His Holiness?
Yeah, I've forgotten who did Ling Rinpoche write it and His Holiness versified, or it was the other way around?
I thought it was the other way.
That Ling Rinpoche wrote it.
No.
His Holiness wrote it,
Yes,
and then Ling Rinpoche versified.
That's my understanding.
Okay, it could be. I just don't
My question
remember it.
kind of also is that, does that mean there wasn't anything before His Holiness wrote it, or did His Holiness work on something similar and changed it, or?
Was there another Kalachakra succession? There was the generic succession, that's for sure. That goes back to the first Panchen Lama, who was the tutor of the fifth Dalai Lama.
No, the Kalachakra succession Guru Yoga. Before His Holiness, the 14th Dalai Lama wrote this.
I have no
there
idea. I
anything
never
similar?
asked His Holiness. I've never come across one. I never asked His Holiness. I have no idea. No idea. Most sadhanas, by the way, are just... Tibetans have no concept of plagiarism being improper. And so even Tsongkhapa plagiarized a tremendous amount from earlier in Lam-rim Chemo and these sort of things. Plagiarized from the Kadampa Lam-rims, because there were some Lam-rims written in the Kadampa tradition. You don't hear about them very much, but there were. And so this is not seen as anything wrong. This is seen as showing respect to the previous tradition and then just elaborating it more and so on. So there are lots and lots of versions of sadhanas. Lots of versions. And what His Holiness always says is that, when one becomes too popularized, so that, people have it on their coffee table and stuff and like that, but then you need something fresh, because what's really important is to treat this as something sacred, and not something which is, a Kalachakra t-shirt that the baby throws up all over. That really lowers the whole thing. How can you have great respect for it? You might as well have a Kalachakra ashtray or something like that. So you don't want to just vulgarize it. So it has to be something sacred. And that's why you don't want to...
What, a baby throwing up is sacred?
You can look at it from the deepest point of view, but from the conventional point of view, it is not respectful. Not respectful.
Depends whose baby.
Yeah.
Anybody's baby is a baby. Let's not lose sight of the conventional truth.
Come on, there are more important.
More important.
He has questions.
Yeah,
Let's
so what
go
are your
to
questions?
Thank you.
I just wondered, in the list of offerings, there's something called Gandam, which I'm not familiar with. I just wondered what Gandam
Oh, well, I don't know. I mean, I did this many years ago. There's a mistake. Ganda is the perfume.
Yeah.
And actually, it's cologne water. It's something that you sprinkle on. It's refreshing as a nice scent. That was repeated twice. That's wrong.
Oh, I see. So it's, the first one is
It should be deleted.
deleted, okay?
Yeah. I mean, I asked His Holiness specifically. He said, there's a mistake. Printer's mistake. That happens.
And the other question was, could you explain a little bit about what Dala Paramita is, which I see was translated as strength, I think, in one of the earlier prayers. I just wonder how it's different from enthusiasm.
No.
What page are you on?
Right. Now, I must say I don't have that instantly fresh in my mind, so now I'm trying to rely on my memory. First of all, the difference between Prajna Paramita and Jnana Paramita, between discriminating awareness and deep awareness. Discriminating awareness is just of voidness. Deep awareness is of the two truths inseparably.
Okay.
So there's a difference between those two. Upaya is the skillful means to achieve enlightenment. And Pranidhana, the prayers to achieve enlightenment. Bala, if I remember correctly, and I can't give 100% certainty to this, was the strength not to turn away from enlightenment. And then Jnana Paramita is, the actual, realization of the two truths. The two truths inseparably, not just the deepest truth, which would be Prajna Paramita.
I see. So Dala Paramita is talking about, for instance, people who would turn away from the Bodhisattva path to pursue
it's too difficult. This one is, such a pain in the neck that I really don't want to work for this one.
Nirvana.
Yeah.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
The thing that some Mara asked Buddha, to give him Buddha's arm, so he cut off his right arm and gave it to him with his left arm, and he said, I won't accept it because you gave it to me with your left arm because it's dirty. This sort of thing that could be a bit discouraging.
This was, who was this?
Some previous life of the Buddha as a Bodhisattva. Somebody did that.
It was one of his.
No, it wasn't. Was it Shariputra?
I think so.
Shariputra. One of these people. Anyway, it's just illustrative. It doesn't matter who did it.
What did you say the other two? Sheila and
Oh, these are the 6. These are the 10 far-reaching attitudes or perfections. They're far-reaching in the sense that they take you all the way to enlightenment. That's literally what the Sanskrit and Tibetan means. Because perfection sounds like you have to be perfect, and that's perfection, just speaking about the resultant stage. And this is both the path stage and the resultant stage. So dana is generosity, shila is ethical self-discipline, shanti is patience, virya is joyful enthusiasm, perseverance, joyful perseverance. Dhyana is stability of mind. Usually people translate that as concentration, but it's a little bit clearer in Shanti Deva's chapter on it. You're talking about mental stability. That's not going to go up and down because of the disturbing emotions and has concentration in that sense. It's a little bit broader than just concentration. It's mental stability. And prajnaparamita is discriminating awareness of specifically voidness. This is Galupa. And non-Galupa has a slightly different explanation of prajnaparamita and jnanaparamita, but let's stick with Galupa for the moment. Galupa is radically different from the others. Tsongkhapa is an incredible revolutionary, such incredible courage they have. And don't get me started on Tsongkhapa. But he went around to all the monasteries, from all the traditions, because he got these ideas, this understanding, and checked it with everybody from these other explanations, and said, "Come on, this was not adequate what they were understanding." But he went and he checked it with everybody, the best minds, to see if they could, refute him. And they couldn't. That took a lot of guts.
I think I've made a mistake here. Is Bala Paramita in the...
Right, that's the strength. And I'm not 100% sure that I remember it correctly, but I think it's the strength not to turn back.
Okay, is it yellow and is it in the northeast corner? West corner?
Wait a second.
I'll try to...
Dhyana, Vira, Sheila, Shanti, Dhyana, Prajna, Upaya, Bala. No, Upaya, Pranidhana. Bala is behind you. This is the yellow one.
Behind.
Direct. It's not in the corner. It's directly behind
Direct.
It's directly?
Yeah.
Directly behind you.
We had that in, may I add?
Yeah.
We had that in Paris, that there was a difference between Kirti sense of Rinpoche and the Namgyal tradition.
Okay, because this Namgyal...
Okay.
Oh, which one is which?
Well,
the explanation that I was giving is based on Deti Rinpoche's commentary to the Sadhana.
Yeah, and some other people, they have a different direction, which means in the northwest.
Which one does Kirti Rinpoche
follows that?
Right, well, he's coming from an Amdo lineage,
yeah,
which seems to be slightly different from what you get in central Tibet.
Yeah, I just want to add that because we had that already, and we just said there are two traditions.
Okay.
As I was saying, with the difference between the different college textbooks within the Galupa monasteries, you don't ask specifically what lineage it is. Within Galupa, you can get different answers on the same question from different masters. Very confusing. Different lineages.
And all okay.
And all of them are okay. All are okay. All of them lead to valid experience. But the fact that there's diversity allows for Buddhism not to be dogmatic. So you're going to have debates. Very good. Benefit. Advantage.
Right. It keeps the mind active as opposed to
just dogma. Just memorize it, and this is the way it is.
I noticed that Vishumata.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to
That slight little piece of blue is that's very different to draw. 4 faces, 2-dimensionally. That's not easy to draw.
Alex?
Especially when one's supposed to be behind.
Yeah. But you are aware how easy it is to remember all these faces. And they're the same colors as the directions of the mandala. Both hers and, both the two figures, the male and female figure, their faces are the same color as the direction that those faces are facing.
Alex?
So the front face would be
there is a special Kalachakra mandala being offered, which is different from the common 37 heaps mandala, or the 23 heaps mandala.
Right, that's according to the Kalachakra description of the universe.
Could you just elaborate a little bit on that? Okay.
How many years do you have?
The description of the universe is different in Kalachakra from the description in Abhidharma. And the details are very elaborate. And His Holiness has often said that it doesn't matter.
Okay.
Because he said that if it's more comfortable to offer a globe of the earth or a model of the universe according to how science does it, that's okay. The fact that Buddha taught two different systems shows that neither of them is to be taken literally. It's only if something appears over and over again. This Dharmakirti says, how do you know, this is a big, big topic in Buddhism, how do you know that it's interpretable or definitive? Did Buddha really mean that? Or was he just saying it because people who gave him lunch couldn't understand something different? So he, wanted to teach them something that, fit into, he didn't want to freak them out completely, so he taught them something that they could understand, so it's interpretable. So Dharmakirti says, pardon my irreverence, but I think you have to put it into real terms of what actually happened. So Dharmakirti says, well, it appears over and over and over again, and almost everywhere, like the 3 jewels of refuge, or karma, or these, or get out of samsara, these type of things. Then the Buddha really meant it. But if it's Abhidharma type of thing, and I've always made a big thing out of this. I think it was on the first day. To stick to it doesn't really matter. Now, what is the... This is an interesting point. His Holiness didn't elaborate on it. He's elaborated on other occasions. Is that the description of the universe in Guhya Samaja, and much more specifically in Kalachakra, is intended to show a parallel between the macrocosm and the the shape and proportions of the universe with the shape and proportions of the body, and then you have the same shape and proportions of the mandala and the same shape and proportions of the body of the figure. So bring everything into meditation and see, and that helps you to understand that, the false appearance of it all is, the same type of false appearance of everything, and you can purify everything. So it's done like that. So it's for a different purpose. Abhidharma purpose is, Abhidharma is to develop, if you look at the 3 baskets, to develop discriminating awareness, so you work with categories and complex systems and many variables and so on. It trains the mind to become analytic. So in this said, neither of the systems was designed to navigate a ship to the moon. So the Western, or navigate a boat on the ocean. So you have the Western description, and the Western description is revised every 10 or 20 years, so you can't say that any of them is, absolutely, that's the way that it is. So it's functional. So this is interesting that His Holiness now is saying very strongly this thing about when does conception, when does the mental continuum enter the physical basis?
Right.
And you were present at far more of the science conferences than I was, but it, the physical basis has to be sufficiently developed to support mental activity. Now, how do you define? What are the defining characteristics of mental activity? Again, I think you have to bring prasanga into here. It's made up by what definition you want to give it.